So we'll start at 4:10 exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So let's start.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. We have a social accountability, a constitutional opportunity, and a moral responsibility to help others and ourselves in both career and personal life. To this end, we, the IEEE SBs of RSET and GECT, as part of Bazinka, present to you our second speaker, Mr. John Samuel. Mr. John is a social entrepreneur, international strategic advisor, civic leader, and public policy and governance expert. He has been in senior leadership roles in the United Nations, International Development and Human Rights Organization for more than 2 decades. He has a multidisciplinary academic background and was also a visiting fellow at the Institute of Development Studies, University of Sussex, and at the Advocacy University, Washington. Now, let's welcome our guest. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir, so can you share with us your educational experiences, where you did your schooling and college?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is, it's good to be in touch with you. I did do my schooling in ordinary government schools closer to my home in Adu, and college also in an ordinary college nearest my home called Shastangota. But then I did my higher studies in Pune. My master's in 2 or 3 subjects in Pune, and also my research work in, my PhD in social linguistics. That's also in Pune. So mostly I've been in Pune I've been based in Pune soon after my graduation for almost many years, from 85 onwards. And then definitely I went to, US to study advocacy fellowship. I was at Harvard to study human rights, lots of training, international training at University of Sussex, studied economics at University of Oslo. So mostly my basic studies, in India, but lots of training in UK, US, and, Europe. That's my background as well as the studies are concerned. I did my science till graduation, then moved to literature, then linguistics, social science, and then economics. And the kind of work which I do is largely in the area of public policy and governance. And I work with a lot of young people, including students of engineering colleges across. I have created what you call Open Space India. It's a youth mentorship, network. We used to work in 6 or 7 states of India. Lots of students from engineering background were also there. So I'm familiar with engineering students as well. That's my background.
So you have a lot of experiences that we would like to hear from you, sir. So, sir, we have a question. At this juncture of international concern over the pandemic, how important is the role that the UN has to play?
See, the most important role of United Nations has three or four roles as far as this is concerned, because United Nations is the only multilateral organization. As you know, United Nations is a membership-based organization of the member states. So you have around 192 member states and observer status, couple of them. So it is the first multilateral body. So one of the most important, three important roles it has. United Nations has a very specialist agencies. As you know that United Nations is a network of institutions. So you have UN Secretariat, then you have a number of agencies, including UNDP, where I was working, then UNICEF, WHO, like that. So these are all specialized agencies. So one of the specialized agency in the United Nations is WHO. So when it comes to any communicable diseases or epidemiology or pandemic, the United Nations specialist agency is the World Health Organization. So World Health Organizations coordinate and process information all over the world, give guidelines of how do you identify COVID cases, pandemic, and some of the policy advices. And then you have the second role. So specialist agency is the first role. The second role of United Nations is coordinated the action. So there are different governments, may like to have a joint venture, both in terms of humanitarian response or in terms of the economic response. So United Nations Secretary General and the Secretariat has a role to play. And each country, UN, as you know, that the lead agencies, UNDP, UNICEF, FAO, etc., is in most of the countries. So the United Nations resident coordinator has a coordinating role with different embassies to do humanitarian responses or action within a given country. So these are all the primary role: information, research, public policy, guidance, and a coordination role. That is the role of and some of the UN agencies also are directly into action. Like for example, UNICEF directly get into action, particularly when it comes to education, when it comes to children's rights, all of them. Then you have FAO. In many countries, there will be food scarcity, all those things, food and agriculture organizations. Sometimes they coordinate that, those support action, though it is a specialized research organization is FAO. So that is just a quick summary of the role of UN.
Thank you, sir, for sharing that with us. Not all of us are informed about it. So who are the people who have that actually influenced you a lot in your life?
So many people, as you know, that often people get influenced by their people in their home, or people in the schools, teachers and peer group, etc. So I am influenced by, as a very young kid, I was encouraged to read by my maternal grandfather. So at a pretty young age, maybe at the age of 4, I started, or he taught me, rather, he persuaded me to read newspapers, which is something which I still continue, right? And that nurturing of reading by as a very very young boy, young kid, like 4 years, 5 years, till 9 years, I grew up with my grandfather and grandmother, and reading became a very very important thing that stayed with me all through. And I may have probably 15 to 18,000 books on almost all the subjects. So one other thing is that influenced me, in terms of, and also most of the value systems, the do's and don'ts, all those things one learned pretty young. Then, later on, your peer group, number of people, at a later stage, there is one person who influenced me a lot, who is no more, is David Cohen, who's a very, very well-known person who used to be the advisor to John F. Kennedy's government. and a peace activist. And he used to be a very, very well-known, activist. He's no more. So he is the one who trained me in terms of number of leadership without saying anything. So just being with him and watching him, and and again, he was one of the most well-read person who had a bookstall in Washington. It's now sold off. His wife used to run it. Uh, Almost all the presidents of America used to come and read and buy books. It's called The Politics and Prose. So he influenced me a lot. And if you know a social scientist, Rajini Kothari, um, he worked with me as a fellow at a later stage, wrote the autobiography. He is the topmost, or actually the founding father of political science in India. So like that, you may not have heard about Vijay Tendulkar, who is the topmost playwright and script writer, who was also, I had the privilege. So there's lots of people. It's a cumulative process of learning and understanding and looking at people's and their value. And that's how I learned.
Oh, okay, sir. So coming into more recent events, so what is your personal opinion about the EIA draft?
See, EIA draft, it's a very, very, my personal opinion is this, it is rather dangerous. It's a very big irony, because we are going through an environmental crisis. Actually, this epidemic crisis is also connected with an environmental crisis. Now you have problem, the two kind of problems are unbridled, extractive industries and mining, the rich people. And if you really look at in India, the poorest districts, the most environmentally fragile districts, these are where their mining companies are doing in work in an unbridled manner. So actually earlier, there was some sort of restrictions, right? Both at the local governments level, you need a number of permissions. Now it's completely taken off. So I'm studying it further on. It's exactly what are the impact which is going to be. So it's a free for all kinds of stuff. Companies can, do things the way they want. So that is scary, because we are living in an environmentally fragile, planet, where you need much more restrictions and policy environment to ensure that companies are responsible. There is checks and balance at every level. Those are things are being taken out. And this, what happened is, it's a very interesting thing in the environmental jurisprudence in India largely came through court in the 1980s, right? Because there was nothing much on that. Then in the last 20 to 25 years, there are lots of laws established. There are lots of regulations established. It's all to protect the environment, right? Now you have a situation, for example, as you know, we are living in August, right? In Kerala, what's one of the major problems? Over a period of time, all our regular water flow systems have been disrupted, right? So all the canals were, stopped, constructions were done. So the natural flow of water in Kerala, actually, the water table were maintained to a large extent by marshy paddy field. And this is, I have seen it. Now, what happened is indiscriminate filling of all these natural water reservoirs. Look at Trivandrum. There is something called Akkulam Kayal. Look at that. I have seen the last 20 years how slowly but steadily encroachment happens. There is nothing, no longer a lake there, right? It has shrunk so much. Look at the freshwater lake in Shastangota. Same thing happens. So what is happening is, I'm just giving an example. How this all play out. Actually, the last year's flood and even this, flooding happens because you have done away with the natural flow of water, which was in Kerala. indiscriminate constructions everywhere and anywhere. Actually, it is not only private, government, and which is result to natural disaster. So you need to see that there is a direct connection between cumulative environmental degradation and natural disaster. And natural disaster kills so many people. Most of the people who die are the poor people, right? Because they have less stable houses, etc., etc. So the problem about it is EIA largely supports the haves, the companies, those who want to construct, and its consequences are going to be on the poor. So this is my sort of overall view, but it will take some more time. Actually, I'm doing a detailed analysis of on this, which I'll do later. So I'm worried about the EIA.
Thank you, sir. Many of our viewers will also be educated about this from your talk. So, sir, how important is the role that engineers have to play in a developing country like ours?
See, as you know, when you say engineers, engineers is one subsection of professionals, right? So you have engineers have a lot of role to play. But the problem which is happening even now, there's only very less percentage of people who study engineering do engineering, and that is the um, irony of our education system. So earlier in Kerala, there were very few engineering colleges, probably 5 or 6 engineering colleges, right? And very few seats. So there is a demand supply. There was more demand for engineers in Kerala itself, largely in the area of, civil engineering and electrical engineering, both in the electricity department and PWD. But later on, what happens is when the engineering disciplines have increased many folds, colleges have increased, you have a situation where lots of people complete engineering, but they don't have enough jobs. So large number of them, because of their basic experience in logical reasoning and sort of science and engineering, they get into IT field. Within the IT field, there are very few people who actually does engineering. Many of them are into data processing and entry. So you have, the point about it is we need to really put engineering education in perspective. The fact of the matter is most of the people go to engineering these days, actually very few people go for pure science and scientists. And if you really look at the number of people go for MTech and then PhD and research from engineering, there is a significant number, but it's still less than 2%. Those who go to the research part of engineering. A significant number of them get into what you call engineering related area in information technology, in electronics, in some companies, but large number of them then go for MBA and then do things which have nothing to do with engineering. So that's a sort of a tragedy when you say engineers. Those who study engineering do not end up being engineers. Yesterday I was talking to one of my cousins who was a topper in mechanical engineering from CET, who had the third, at that time he did BSc third rank in Kerala. So because he was smart, soon after engineering, he got in BPCL, right? And he was telling me that, his work had hardly anything to do with engineering. And he was saying that, his boss is somebody who did his BCom and then later on MBA, who went up. So he was saying that, all the thing he studied as a mechanical engineer with a lot of passion has nothing to do with his kind of thing. He's basically doing a management job. So that's a sort of problem which we need to see in the engineering education. Now, what engineers can do? Engineers can do a lot of stuff. As you know, within engineering, there is a discipline. So, when you call it civil engineering or architect or many others, now there is something called environmental engineering. they have a lot to do with the way we plan. We, we move on. The second thing is, so the planning, as you know, urban planning is done largely by people who have done an engineering background. Many of them I know civil and then don't do architectural and urban planning. They have a lot to do it. Second, I think in terms of technology, huge role in the terms of sustainable development, sustainable energy. If you look at SDG, many of them are to do with climate change, water conservation, sustainable energy options. So engineers have a big role to play in terms of what I call moving to cutting edge research, work, etc., etc. So engineers have a lot of role to play, but unfortunately, all those who study engineering do not necessarily do engineering. So I would say that in the cutting technology area of sustainable energy and sustainable development, engineers have a role to play. The planning of urban planning, which is to do with both environment and human ecology and everything, engineers have a lot of stuff to play. Urban transport, transporting, engineers have a lot to do that. So engineers have a big impact. And one of the things why many of those cutting edge area recruit engineers is engineering helps you to study many things in a logical manner, do problem solving in a logical manner. These things come handy. So that's my quick response
Okay,
on the role
sir.
of engineering. Yeah.
Since we are discussing education, what do you think about the new national education policy the government has released recently?
See, national education policy, there are many positive things about it, right? In terms of what I call it, I believe many times what happens is the language policy. I always feel, see, I studied in Malayalam medium schools, right? And as a linguist, I can say that your comprehension skills at a very young age, so I started reading Madhubhumi, Manorama, etc. in Malayalam. Then only I moved to English. So your comprehension skills and others are in mother tongue. You have a fantastic way of conceptualizing things. And then, when you learn English or German or anything, your brain absorption capacity is very high. What happened is so the first thing is first, I think the language policy till fourth, the mother tongue or the local language study, I agree, right? Second thing I like about it is some of those which is there in the international sector. Many times, you do for your engineering study and you have two supply, and then you are not anywhere, right? Now what happens is probably you will get a certificate saying that you did 4 years of studies and you completed this magic courses, and that also helps you. I have seen so many people who are bright actually. For various reasons, they couldn't complete engineering, right? And then they don't even have a certificate that they have studied for 3 years or 4 years, despite that. So that provides, new education policy. So I see there are so many positive aspects about the new education policy. Then for the, you also have options at the higher education level. So overall, my sense about the new education policy is a step forward. But there are areas which needs to be a little bit worried about. For example, one of the things which is a problem, which is now, in a way they endorse it, the quality of education, right? How do you really, Kerala is a classic example. I hope all of you are from Kerala or from outside Kerala also.
So we have viewers from everywhere,
From
but
how many
mostly
states?
it's focused on Kerala. Most of the
Yeah.
viewers are going to be from Kerala.
So anywhere, the problem, let me tell you about Kerala example, but Tamil Nadu also is very similar. So what happens is nowadays you have for marks, 10th and 12th, you liberally give the marks. I also have been a teacher in schools and a university. So now the problem about is you answer, you answer a question, you get marks. And you reasonably good earlier, somebody who would have got 70, 75, now you may get all A plus. I have interviewed many people in Kerala who have completed marks with 97%, 96%, etc., etc. But their understanding, the conceptual understanding or understanding beyond their textbook is next to nothing. So what happens is many people from Kerala, I mean, even this is one of the problem in engineering also. Engineering, you used to have, I hope it's still there, social science and economics, etc., right?
Yes.
Very few people take it so seriously. But when you go for an interview, these things matters. And many students who are otherwise very good, so-called quote-unquote academic records in terms of mark, fail miserably in interviews. And there is an unemployability factor. So the point about it is, in education, my worry about even in this, how do you ensure the quality of education while you also make education accessible to a large number of people? And in Kerala is an example. Kerala, 20 years or 30 years, there are not many people who have passed 10th. Now it is very difficult to see anybody who has not passed 12th, right? And then it's difficult. But the problem about it is those who have passed 10th earlier times, because of it was difficult, many of them are, done so well in life because of their language and mathematical abilities and other stuff. Now, you will be very surprised to see in Bodhigram, it's a campus where I am. I was, hosting a national service volunteers. Those who have finished, those who are in 12th standard, many of them could not read two sentences in English. Forget about it. So I was so surprised, because in our, study hall, there are lots of posters of Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Nelson Mandela, etc. And these are all one sentence code. They couldn't read it. So that's the sort of tragedy which I am even worried about. New education policy do not, sort of address some of those real concerns about the quality of education at school and college level. But overall, my sense is it's a positive, I would rate it as positive. I'm not going to the section by section details, but I would say that generally I'm positive about it. It has taken many of those suggestions from, it has 2-3 years of consultation resulted in it. Of course, you can pick holes in it, but generally, like, EIA, I'm negative. In new education policy, I'm relatively positive.
Okay, thank you, sir. So now coming to a more global perspective, there are unrest all over the world when it comes to ethnic and racist issues, as seen in the United States now with the Black Lives Matter. How do you think that the youth now could help and revive the situation?
See, what's happening is actually today I did a detailed post on what's happening in the world. See, if you really see what is happening in 21st century, you know, uh, the first 50 years of 20th century was in turmoil. Yeah. So if you look at the last 19th century, 1890s to sort of 30 years, there was a big global trade, business have increased, tremendous connections. Germany was technologically, sort of leap heading. UK was in its zenith of power, although it was stretching. You have 1914 to around 30 years, right? 30 years, world has gone through one of the worst period. First is the World War One, which ended the Ottoman Empire, which created League of Nations, which started the communist revolution, October Revolution, etc. Right? World War One. But also 100 years ago, if you know, a pandemic, what is being termed as Spanish flu, which killed more people than the war. Actually, the First World War and This pandemic killed a lot of people. Then you raise the area of uncertainty and insecurity. And then if you know that fascism, Nazism, all those things, and the Second World War. The point I wanted to say that from Second World War, 1950, for another 50 years, we have a relatively peaceful, time. There were war here and there, but at a global level, there was not that much of a trouble. But the neoliberal economic policies did two things. It created jobs and access to middle class and upper middle class in a big way, including a lot of us got globalized, including me. Many of us went in the 90s all over the world. For the tertiary educated, for the knowledgeable, or for the people with high skill variety, the whole globe was open and the jobs were open. And the situation began to unravel in a very bad way. 21st century started with 9/11. Three things happened in 21st century. First is the digital revolution made everything visible within a fraction of a second, as you know that. When you do a social media post, within a fraction of a second, it reaches from Fiji to, in the South Africa or in South America, and Latin America, Rio de Janeiro, anywhere. So this has a positive and negative impact. Positive impact means beyond space and time, we could connect across the world. We made it. But the flip side was panic spread across the world. Like every bad news spread much faster than the good news. So 9/11 is the first globally telecast thing. So this has created first level of insecurity across the thing, the fear of the unknown. And that's what it is. 21st century is the fear of the unknown. And this fear of unknown created what I call the surveillance capitalism. So what we are talking is, you are recording right now, right? So everybody who is in this meeting can be under surveillance. So you cannot think about I'm saying that last 25 years I have seen there are surveillance camera everywhere. Now earlier 20 years ago I went to office very happy, everybody think. Now I have to have fingerprint to open my office. You cannot get into the lift. So what happened is, when a sense of insecurity spread across the world, so there's a trust deficit across the world. And the trust deficit is to the people who is the unknown. Now, unknown is in a white dominated area, somebody with a mustache and a brown color, and who doesn't look like me, who doesn't eat like me, who doesn't behave like me, is an unknown person, right? In the earlier thing, they were called barbarians, right? People who are beyond my fear of civilization. This has created a deficit trust to the unknown persons, that is migrants across, right? And the minorities. So the black in America, the migrants in Europe, the migrant workers in Kerala. So whenever there is a problem, they will say it is Bengali, right? And if his religion is something else, he said it's a Bengali Muslim. Because the majoritarian thing, which we say that, though Malayalis went all over the world, we have a second class attitude towards the people actually who work in our own fields. So this is the thing about 21st century. Number one, a sense of insecurity and panic is spreading across the world. The paradox, when we travel more, the more we became disconnected as a people. When we got more connected globally on the net and the social media, we get less connected to our own next door neighbor or those who sit near you. In the same house, you connect people much more than your parents or your brothers and sisters. So it's a very paradox thing. This information technology connects us a lot, but also it divides us a lot, right? Our own household, it's happened. When, I'm saying that when there was no television, I grew up in a stage. When there was no mobile phone, I had more time to spend with my grandfather, right? My grandfather told me the stories. My grandfather told me how to teach. Imagine now my kids or others will not have the time for the grandfather, right? Because they'll say, you are moving very fast. And they will say, the granddad doesn't know anything, right? Because he cannot do WhatsApp or Facebook. My mother cannot. But my mother will know a lot of things at the age of 87. So that's one of the tragedies. So the point I'm making is now the COVID teaches us two, three things. As you know, when the COVID came, all of us shrunk to our own familiar ground. Those who are outside, came to Kerala, because what happened is there you feel insecure, emotionally insecure. You feel insecure in your own, what I call, comfort zone. So many people came back to Kerala. The second thing which happened is, these people who came, they began, it's like a train reservation system. As long as I got a seat, the all other person coming is a disturber. You're worried about that person. That person is dangerous. This exactly happened in Kerala. The people who came and settled here, those who are, anybody who came from Kuwait or Dubai or other places, say that don't come to my house. This exactly happened to a young person, as you know, came from uh, Russia after medicine, because she had to, there was a quarantine. All, her parents and others all left the house and given the house to her. She was so depressed, she committed suicide. So the point I'm making is, this is 21st century. There is a fear of unknown. There's a trust deficit. There is a, what you call, insecurity, despite you have technology and everything. Now, what young people can do, first thing first, technology helps, but technology is not everything. Be human, be humanized. So the young people did the greatest thing when the flood was happening, right? They used technology, but they went ahead and done so many things. So you have, what happened is, when you're driving, when you see an accident, stop and help. It is easy to be a human being, but it's difficult to be a human. And you have to say, you use technology every time, but be a human always. When somebody, your fellow human beings, are in trouble, look, in Calicut, when the plane accident happens, most of the people who went there and ran and helped the young people. So young people means people with a lot of ideals. Young people means people with a lot of dreams. Young people means they are not cynical about life. And young people means they can do things. So my hope is in young people. Young people must change politics, because they should bring new energy and ideals, saying that politics is not bad, but politics should be not to, amass wealth and power, but politics is the responsibility to serve. You don't need to start an NGO or anything to do social work. You can do volunteering, doing by small work, somebody to help to cross a road. I think young people can do a lot of stuff. See, my hero is Jacinda, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, right? Fantastic. She's just in 30s. She did wonders, right? Because the difference with that thing is she's been 100% human, right? She is not ashamed of being the mother of a young infant. And there are lots of young people across the world are coming to leadership. The problem in our country, young people are either to choosing politics and other things as a career. They become cronies of the leaders rather than setting the agenda. I would say that young people can change the world, even in the post-COVID world, because I feel only the old world has to go, and to renew the world, to get a new thing. It is young people only can change the world.
Thank you, sir, for inspiring us. We have a question from a viewer in the chat box. When the whole world is looking for sustainable energy sources and alternatives to the carbon based fuel, countries like India are slowly opening up to the chances of nuclear energy. But even then, there are public interest litigations have been filed against the government for pursuing nuclear projects. Where do you think the plan is failing? Is there an alternative way of creating more sustainable energy resources with public support?
First and foremost is, you see, we are at the cusp of a change. As you know, in late 19th century, when oil was discovered in the United States of America, and later on in 1920s in the Gulf world, and this is the time, the motor car technology has developed, first with Ford and then Toyota and across. And, our electric needs, etc., etc. So now what happened, we are reaching the second level of revolution is going to come. After the digital revolution, the biggest revolution is going to be in the sustainable energy revolution. Now, at the moment, you have thermal power, you have nuclear power, you have hydroelectric power. All three have its own pros and cons. Definitely, the biggest larger problem is the thermal power, right? Mostly using coal-based crude, that kind of power, and because it contributes to climate change. Hydroelectric is very good. In countries like Norway, it is much more clean. But in places like tropical regions like Kerala, Thailand, etc., the hydroelectric project has a big problem because it also affects the biodiversity and destroy the forests. Then the option is nuclear power. Nuclear power is good provided it is safe, and that's where the problem. No, I mean, in the late 70s, nuclear power was a fashion in everywhere. But what happened in Chernobyl. So the trouble about it is, I would say that you need a mix and match of power generation. Definitely, you need hydroelectric. You need what I call limited nuclear power as a transition, because nuclear power can, Kodangulam go bust, Kerala go bust, right? So that's the sort of trouble which we have. So needs to be managed. But my hope is, of course, you have now solar energy, etc. So my hope is there's going to be a dramatic, because I know from some of my friends who are in the cutting edge of technology, the dramatic, transition of technology, which would be battery based. But, for example, a car will run fully on solar energy, right? I mean, the solar is the most sophisticated. Now, the problem about the solar is the cost is very high to produce in a big way, right? You can do it in your household, etc. So there is going to be a breakthrough, definitely. And there is going to be a little more breakthrough in the nuclear in terms of the safety of it. So big plants, small plants, etc., etc. So I hope it is going to really move. But as you know, we cannot wait for the next revolution to happen, but revolution will definitely happen, right? Uh, because I cannot imagine I am talking from this phone now, because as you know, when we start a computer, 186, 286, huge computers, right? Which, I mean, replace, you cannot think, you will think that it is a prehistoric age, right? Now in our hand, our smartphone is more powerful than your laptop, which I used to do it. It has functions which is amazing. This is going to happen. Even the next thing is in the electricity. So your mobile will begin first, like a Wi-Fi electric charge is going to happen. So I'm almost see by 2030, 35, probably even before that, you are going to have a big, energy revolution. But in the interim time, you need to have a mix and match of energy resources, and also energy consumptions needs to be managed. The fuel-based technology would, the point biofuel technology would be eventually needs to be phased out, because that's not sustainable in the long run, both in terms of economically, but also geologically and environmentally. So that's my quick stuff. So it's not a either or. If you ask me, are you against nuclear power? I will not say either or on this. I would say that, as a policy person, I'd say that my question is, do you need huge nuclear power or limited ones, right? And these things, and these are the kind of what I call appropriate technology needs to be developed. At the moment, this mega nuclear power, as we see in terms of Chernobyl, and as we see in terms of number of accidents in submarines, many of them are nuclear operated. We need to be careful because of the pros and cons.
Yes, we hope that the future will be indeed brighter than the now. So I'm sure that you must have traveled to several countries as part of your job. So, which country have you been impressed by the most?
Now, this is
Which
a
is your
very difficult, this is a very difficult question. You have seen so many beautiful actors and actors, Amitabh Bachchan, Aishwarya Rai, whom you like most, your mother, right? So, if you ask me what is the place which impressed me most, is Adur, in this village where I was born and brought up, because it makes me happy. Is it objective? No, it's a subjective criteria, right? So, but let's look at the way, instead of impressed or not. Say, I lived in Norway. Norway is a very interesting country. Now, many people say, why can't Kerala be like Norway? Actually, Kerala had a public policy paper on 2030 saying that it should be like Norway. It's impossible. Because Kerala has, Norway is 8 times bigger than Kerala. Norway has only 1/8 of the population of the Kerala, right? Hardly 45-50 lakhs is the population of Norway, right? Now, Norway has one of the biggest, hydroelectric power suppliers of the entire Europe, especially Northern Europe. Norway has the highest oil and natural gas deposits in this place. Norway has historically one of the best shipping nations of the world. You name it, but they have only 45, 48 lakhs people, hardly less than 50. Imagine Kerala had only that much people. We also would have had the best of many things. So the trouble about it is Norway. I liked about Norway. I'll tell you what I liked about Norway. First and foremost, I liked about Norway is the gender equality in everywhere, right? I've seen, and this, I've gone to many houses. Here in India, even among the educated people, the division of labor is something which needs to be challenged. So it's a job of a woman to go and work, to come and clean the house, to cook for the everyone, to send the kids to the school, and to teach the kids homework. Everything is on mother. So a woman in India, even if particularly if you're a professional, she hardly gets any time for herself, right? But in Norway, look at Norway. I have seen it. The gender equality and justice is more or less equal. So if somebody travels, the woman travels, the man takes care of the child. And if somebody is working, you get 1 year full paid leave for, childbearing, for, maternity leave, 1 year with full stuff. The men also get paternal leave, but they can only take it within 2 years of the birth of the child, 2 or 2.5. They cannot do it together. When mother is working, the father has to take care of the kids. That gender equality is the one which impressed me most, right? That is one of the reasons, as you know. Look at Finland. Most of them are women as leaders. Look at Sweden. most of them are women. Look at Norway. Most of them are women in the leadership. That's what impressed me most, right? So when compared to the rest of the world, I have seen, my closest, when I wrote about this. Once I was, when I was heading the UN office in Norway. We had a big meeting, global meeting. The foreign minister came 7 minutes late, right? And I was worried because it's not like our minister; they are extremely punctual. The first thing he said was, look, I'm sorry, I had to take my daughter to school because my partner had a fever, so I had to take, I had to give her a bath and take her to school. Can you imagine a minister in India do this in a feudal situation? So that's where I've seen it, and I've seen the same person, my friend, going to his house. He was doing gardening, and he was cleaning his yard. Can you believe this? And after 5 years of a minister, my friend went back to his job, right? As a teacher. So that's only happened in those countries. I wish so. Those things impress me a lot. Living in Norway for 3 years, these are the things which I really learned. That means a minister can, a minister used to come to me, foreign minister, the UN office on a cycle, on a bicycle in a summer. And that is not because for the press. That's a natural thing, and nobody bothers. And I see so many ministers traveling by public transport. Nobody bothers. They will be sitting there and reading a newspaper. In our case, it's all feudalism all through. It is patriarchy all through. The people who talk about all the gender justice, etc., when they comes to the house, they expect their wives to make a cup of tea or coffee. So those things will have to be changed, and I think young people like you should change it, because it's important. You should understand men and women are equal, 100% equal, right? So even if you have the responsibility, social responsibility, women have equal brain, equal power, equal ability, and this needs to change. you know we are living in an age in India, despite all those development in Kerala, everything, you have hardly less than 10% of the MLAs in the assembly as women. You don't have any political party with women in the leadership. So and this has to change at the level of society. And that's what I'm saying. New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, and let me tell you a place called Rwanda, Kigali. There 50%, more than 50% of the parliamentarians are women. So these are the things which impress me.
Okay, sir. We sincerely hope that one day Kerala might even be better than Norway in those cases. So the current Indian government is heavily marketing their Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme. While that sounds very positive, how practical do you think it is? How long would it take for India to become a truly independent?
See, the problem in India, our politicians are great in rhetoric, very poor in reality. So, before election, after elections, our prime minister is great in speeches and in coining words. So, if you really look at, I'm everywhere. I mean, not only prime minister, all of the, I don't want to take the names, but generally in our place, our politics is, in a management terms, a classic case of over-promising and under-delivering, right? So if you put really in terms of the mark, most of them do not cross 40% mark in terms of their performance. 80% performance, 60% performance, 70% performance is very, in a company, if you're really going to a job, if your performance rating and delivery rating is less than 80%, you're sure you will lose the job, right? So sometimes what happened is, though you are supposed to work 40 hours a week, you will work 50 hours a week because you wanted to deliver. You may have some difficulty, but you will deliver. But how politics is all bindas. We will say that we are self-reliant. Where is we are self-reliant? 490 million people in this country don't have house. Around 74% of the people in this country live with less than $2 a day. Around 12 crore people lost complete job and they are in poverty in the last 3 months. Right? So what are we talking about? If we are talking about, these kind of politicians may not understand, I realize they are people who has supposed to have a good house, a good car, no money. Now, let me tell you dramatic 2 cases of what is happening. Somebody whom I know was earning 5 lakhs as a pilot, was in Jet Airways, lost a job, was waiting for it. And, as you know, the COVID hit. There's no money. All the money he had, he bought a nice car, he bought a flat. Now he doesn't even have the money to pay EMI, right? This is a upper middle class person. And they had to, mortgage their, what I call gold to survive. Now, lots of lower middle class people all around here in my village are in poverty because they were getting 30,000 rupees, 35,000 rupees. That's the kind of most of the people. In India, all the jobs, all the government jobs, including army, military, everything, the paid employee of government job is slightly more than 6.5% of the population. Slightly more than 6.5%. Now, if you go the semi-government, blah, 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 all those things, 8%. You add all the private sector, who are a very, really good payment, still it is less than 11%. So, the paid employees with a regular predictable income and a stable job in this country is less than 10%. You should know that. So you are talking about a country of 132 billion and you give a speech saying that 132 billion. What's happening is when you don't have jobs to give, you give a God. You don't have anything, you spend 300 crore on a statue. Right? And this is happening everywhere. How much money these guys, it matters, because they are hardly any women, because it's a patriarchal system, spend on their publicity, to put their photo on the paper, right? You will be 18 crore, 19 crore is the one day expense people spend on just publicity. So the point about it is, if you really wanted this thing to happen, the first thing to happen, every Indian should have food to eat. See, when you put 500 rupees in the bank account and say that I've saved India, I'm the poor person's chief minister or prime minister, it's bullshit. Right? It's cheating. When thousands of engineering students apply for a job of a peon, there's something wrong in this country. When people with PhDs apply for LD clerk jobs, there is something in this country. So the problem about, unless you get that right, the trouble about it is, look, during COVID times, few companies made huge profit. Huge profit. Reliance is going strong. Adanis are going strong. But you look at everywhere, you give free ration. Yes, I will not die, but it's not going to transform my condition. Right? So that's the problem. The priority is unless you transform it. So the rhetoric is for the people. The money is for the rich. Right? The promises is for the people. And I work for the rich. And this is what's happening because almost all the media in India is taken by the rich and the powerful. Media is no longer, they say that we the people, we the nation, all those things, but they speak for, they are basically peddlers of advertisements for the rich and the powerful. And the news and views are also to do the government. And then you have powerful elites, government elites, who are conformist to the powers that be. They will not question EIA They will not question all the policies which goes this way. And then there is economic elites who funds the political parties. Where does the political parties get the money to contest elections here? So these larger issues, when you say, why I'm saying that this promise saying that we are self-reliant, we are going to change, you clap your hand, you lit a lamp. These kinds of things are basically to distract, to give a kind of sense of unity, sense of hope, without delivering it. That's the trouble. So that's why I don't take, these rhetoric for face value, because in policy, you look at the budget, where the money is spent, right? It's good that 70,000 crores are spent on NREGA. The upper middle class think that NREGA is very bad. It's a waste of money. But if NREGA also not there, large number of people in this country would have died of poverty. So the problem is, you need to change and transform the policy framework in a way which is much more sustainable, less corruption, and the rich also pay for it. Because inequality in this country and all over the world are actually very frightening. Because if you know there is inequality, there'll be violence. Any society with huge inequality will be violence of multiple forms will be there. So I'm worried about the inequality increasing in India and its consequence.
Thank you, sir, for such a deep insight into this. So before we conclude, one of our viewers has requested you to recommend books that everyone you think should read. 3 books that you believe everyone should read.
You know, the book which is a readable one, many people love to read is, Thomas Piketty's The Capital in 21st Century. Anybody has read? It's a very popular book. Huh?
I haven't read it, sir.
It's a very interesting book, which Thomas Piketty is a very young, relatively young economist who have seen how inequality is making a big problem in the world. The second book is slightly more difficult. The first is, the book is 700 pages. It looks big. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
So I'm worried about, because electricity went, so you can see it. So Thomas Piketty's book, and I would say among the history book, there is a very interesting book by Ramchandra Guha, India After Gandhi. And this gives you a historical sense. And then again, I'm saying that, a regular read, Argumentative Indian by Amartya Sen. That's a classic book. You'll get to know a lot by this. Definitely my favorite is a book which probably much younger than, probably at 9th standard I read, is Discovery of India. How many of you have read Discovery of India? Anybody? Jawaharlal Nehru, right?
Yes,
And
we've heard
so many people look at it.
of it.
Not many people read Mahatma Gandhi, My Experiments with Truth, and the Satyanveshana Parishadal. E bookകളൊക്കെ basics bookകളാണ്. And to get a sense about the values which shape our country, how Jawaharlal Nehru perceived India, Indian history, or Mahatma Gandhi, the perspectives of lives and other stuff. It's very important about values. Thomas Piketty's book is about how inequality is working in India, and a historical sense about what happened to India in the last many years. Very, very readable book by Ramchandra Guha. Amartya Sen gives, that book is a lot of knowledgeable about India and the world, etc. It's called Argumentative India. So those are 2 or 3 books, off the head.
Thank you, sir. So with that, we have come to an end of today's talk. I would like to thank you on behalf of RSET IEEE-SB and GECT IEEE-SB. It was a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And it's a great privilege to be with all of you. And I wish all the best for you. And I hope you will be the torch bearers of a hopeful future. And and I would say that be good engineers, but all the more is be good human beings. Good human beings is when you really can make a difference wherever you are, in whatever way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.